The anime begins with a young girl named Kawada Makoto and her beloved feline companion, Chito. One day, they decided to pay a visit to her cousin, Kuramoto Kei, and stay with him for a while. Upon arriving in the city, Kei kindly picked up Makoto, and they headed to his place. However, his little sister, Kuramoto Chinatsu, was a bit confused when she saw Makoto, as she did not recognize her and even mistook her for Kei's girlfriend. Despite this, he escorted Makoto to her room, where she discovered that her belongings had already arrived. Then, he checked and cleaned up her things. Meanwhile, Kei was busy cooking, and Chinatsu approached him with her suspicions about Makoto, claiming that she wasn't a good person because she talked to her cat in the room. However, Kei didn't seem to mind though. After a while, the trio sat down to enjoy their meal together, but Chinatsu kept her distance from Makoto, still convinced that she was a bad girl. Soon after, Makoto realized that she needed to buy some essentials from the convenience store nearby. Then, Kei asked Chinatsu to accompany Makoto since the store was quite far away, and he didn't want her to get lost. Hearing that, Chinatsu agreed to help but requested that Makoto buy her some donuts in exchange for her assistance. Makoto happily accepted this condition, and off they went to the store. During their walk to the convenience store, Chinatsu's curiosity got the better of her, and she began to ask Makoto about where she came from. Then, Makoto explained that she was from Yokohama City. This seemed to excite Chinatsu, and the two started to get along. As they arrived at the convenience store, Chinatsu was overjoyed to see a donut shop and immediately ran towards it. Then, Makoto bought some donuts for both Chinatsu and Kei, as per their agreement. While wandering around the store, Makoto stumbled upon a row of bamboo brooms and decided to hop on one, causing her to float in the air. There, Chinatsu was amazed by this sight, as she had never seen anyone fly on a broom before. Later on, Kei went to visit his friend Ishiwadari Nao at her shop. On the other hand, Makoto and Chinatsu, still flying on the broom, showed up to meet Kei. At that time, Chinatsu was thrilled to tell her brother about flying on the broom with Makoto. Kei then introduced Makoto to Nao, and Makoto declared herself to be a witch. Nao was taken aback by this, as she witnessed Makoto's arrival while flying and claiming to be a witch. The next day, Makoto and Kei going to school together, where they surprisingly find out that Nao is also in their class. It turned out that Nao feels a little scared after seeing Makoto, who introduced herself as a witch and could fly. Then, Makoto explains that although she is a witch, she is just an ordinary girl like Nao and asks her to be friends. Later on, the students are asked to gather in the hall. On the way there, Nao asks why Makoto is living with Kei. Then, she explains that in the witch world, once someone turns 15, they are considered adults and are required to be independent by leaving their parents' house. Her parents told her to stay with her brother so they can have peace of mind, and she also needs to stay in school to further her education because the income of witches nowadays is not stable. Makoto also reveals that there are many other witches like her, especially in the Tohoku area where there are lots of natural resources and magic that make the area famous among witches. At that time, Nao is curious about how witches keep their identities secret from ordinary people. Then, Makoto explains that only other witches and their siblings know about their identity, and if someone else finds out, they must keep it a secret. Soon after finishing school, Kei had plans to hang out with his friends. However, he couldn't walk home with Makoto, so he asked her to tell his mother, Nana, that he would be back for dinner. Later on, he met Nao and asked her to accompany Makoto home. While walking home, Makoto found a mandarin plant, which is rare and has a poison that can be used as a medicine if mixed correctly. Then, she gave the plant to Nao as a gift, but Nao refused it because it looked scary. Meanwhile, Chinatsu arrived home from school and was asked by Nana to go shopping for dinner, but he declined because she wanted to watch a television show. Instead, she asked Nana to buy pudding for Kei and Makoto. As Chinatsu watched TV, Makoto finally arrived home and told her that she walked home alone because Kei and Nao had to leave early for something. Makoto felt proud that she was able to remember the way home, even though she got confused at a fork in the road. Then, she decided to write this achievement in her diary as a special memory for the day. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Hearing that, Chinatsu hurriedly opened the door only to find a mysterious guest wearing a mask. She was so startled that she immediately shut the door and asked Makoto for the police number. Then, Makoto tried to calm her down and explained that the guest was Harbinger, not a bad person. She felt bad about Chinatsu's reaction and apologized to Harbinger for her behavior. It turned out that Harbinger came to visit because he had some work to do in the area. He heard about a new witch in town and wanted to say hello and ask for some medicine. Then, Makoto gave him the medicine he needed, and before leaving, he left a gift for Chinatsu as a way of apologizing for scaring her. After Harbinger left, Makoto gave the gift to Chinatsu, and she was very happy. She hoped that the gift would help Chinatsu overcome her fear and hatred of Harbinger. Later, while Makoto was in class, she fell asleep and had a dream about meeting Nao, who received a lucky sign. When school ended, she went home with Nao and Kei, and she shared her dream with them. She explained that witches' dreams have long been believed to come true, but Kei warned her that this might just be a myth. Shortly after saying goodbye to Nao, Kei spotted some wild bake flowers growing by the roadside. Makoto said she had never tasted them before, so she decided to pick some and cook them. When they arrived home, Nana greeted them and saw the bake flowers Kei had brought. He asked for permission to use the kitchen to cook them. As they were cooking, Chinatsu approached them. Then, Makoto showed her the bake they were going to make into tempura, but Chinatsu didn't seem very interested in cooking because she didn't like bake. Kei then explained to Makoto how to make tempura bake. Before frying the bake, they had to check if the oil was hot enough by seeing bubbles come out of the chopsticks dipped in the oil. He also suggested mixing ice into the tempura batter to make it more flavorful and crunchy. Makoto was impressed by Kei's cooking skills and praised him for it. Then, he taught her how to cook tempura bake, and they finally finished making it. When Makoto was about to taste it, Chinatsu came over to see what they had cooked. She wasn't sure about the results of Kei's cooking, but Makoto said that the tempura bake was delicious. The next day, Makoto went to her uncle named Kuramoto Keiji to learn farming for her witch training. She wanted to grow vegetables, so she asked her uncle for a field to use. Then, he allowed her to use the land behind his house and told her that all the gardening tools and fertilizers were in the warehouse. Makoto was delighted to hear this. After getting permission from her uncle, Makoto began studying farming with Kei. They went to the warehouse to take the tools they needed, and when they arrived at the land, she was surprised to see a lot of weeds growing on it. Kei explained that nobody had taken care of the land since his grandmother died. Then, he suggested that Makoto clear the land to make it easier for her to use it for farming. Soon after, Makoto followed Kei's advice and started clearing the land. However, she had difficulty pulling the weeds. Fortunately, Chinatsu came and helped her. As Makoto and Chinatsu were clearing the land, Makoto explained that a witch needs to have various knowledge and skills, including farming, which can be used for training and to provide for oneself in the future. After clearing the land, Makoto saw a strange bird and asked Kei about it. He told her that it was a pheasant, a bird with beautiful feathers. Then, she tried to catch the pheasant but failed. Kei told her to rest after the tiring day. Shortly after, Makoto and Kei resumed clearing the land. They spread lime and fertilizer on the land, leveled it with a hoe, and watered it. They had to wait for a few weeks for the lime and fertilizer to mix with the soil before the land could be used for farming. At that time, Makoto planned to plant various vegetables since it was still spring, but Kei warned her that the land might not be enough to grow all the vegetables she wanted to grow. Later on, Keiji came to check on the land they had cultivated. According to him, the land was good enough to use, and he suggested that Makoto ask him if there was anything she didn't understand. Then, Makoto took the opportunity and asked if there were any restrictions on what vegetables could be planted together. Keiji explained that some plants cannot be planted together, but before he could elaborate, he saw a pheasant and tried to catch it. After some time had passed, while Chinatsu was watering her yard's flowers, a person wearing clothes that covered their entire body showed up. Strangely, the person knew her and her family and inquired about Makoto. After discovering that Makoto was residing with Chinatsu and her family, the person rushed inside and waited for Makoto to arrive. Upon arriving home, Makoto was taken aback by the presence of her older sister Akane, a renowned witch in the witch world who was highly respected among witches for her exceptional talent. It turned out that Akane had come to Kei's house to check on her younger sister's condition and brought souvenirs for everyone, having traveled to Africa. At that moment, Chinatsu received cocoa pods from Ghana, Makoto received rock sugar from Mali, Kei got oil from Libya, and Nana was gifted pure coffee beans. After distributing the souvenirs, Akane, who noticed that Makoto had not been using much of her magic while at Kei's house, recommended that she use her magic often to avoid weakening her magical abilities. Akane advised Makoto to practice magic even if it was simple, and soon asked her to begin practicing by teaching her easy spells at a nearby temple. Before starting, Akane asked Chinatsu to show them a quiet location. Soon after, Akane took Makoto, Chinatsu, and Kenny to a shrine where she taught them how to summon crows using magic. First, she asked Chinatsu for 2 strands of hair and placed them in an envelope with a spell written on it. Akane burned the envelope, and black smoke appeared. Shortly after, a crow came to Chinatsu. Makoto also tried the spell, but she used her hair instead. With the witch's hair, more crows came. Akane explained that using a witch's hair would make the spell more potent and summon more crows. After the practice, Akane left Makoto and Chinatsu using teleportation magic. A few days later, Makoto, Kei, and Chinatsu went to the Hanami Festival, also known as the Cherry Blossom Festival. On the way, they saw cherry trees with beautiful blossoms, which made Makoto happy. They also visited Hirosaki Castle and took a group photo with a helpful grandmother. At the festival, they used money given by Nana to buy food and snacks. Then, Makoto invited Kei to go to the haunted house, but he was scared and tried to get them to go to the lottery instead. However, she insisted, and they went to the haunted house. Shortly after, Makoto, Kei, and Chinatsu visited a lottery booth where Chinatsu won a doll. As they continued their journey, they came across a fortune teller. Then, Makoto asked for a prediction of her future, and the fortune teller requested her name. However, when the fortune teller asked for personal information like her phone number and address, she refused. The fortune teller then asked if Makoto was Akane's younger sister, which she confirmed. They chatted for a while, and Makoto discovered that the fortune teller was also a witch named Inukai. At that moment, Makoto was excited to meet another witch and wanted to befriend her immediately. However, Inukai declined, citing a bad experience with Akane. Soon after, Inukai recounted how, during last year's Hanami festival, she and Akane went out for a drink. Akane mentioned that she had brought chocolates enchanted with a spell that could turn someone into a beast, which was still experimental. Unfortunately, Inukai unknowingly ate the chocolate after drinking too much, which transformed her into a dog-like creature. Back to the present. At that time, Chinatsu heard the story. Then, she found Inukai's dog-man form very cute. Shortly after, Inukai explained that the magic in the chocolate was not entirely successful, so she could only turn back into a human when night came. However, because of the incident, her life became messy, and she struggled to turn back into a human form because Akane was always wandering around and hard to find. To solve this problem, Inukai opened a fortune-telling booth and hoped that Akane would come to meet her. After that, Makoto and her friends invited Inukai to Kei's house to continue their conversation. Upon arriving, Makoto gave them a book about the magic of turning animals into humans, as a sense of responsibility for what her older sister had done. Despite being new to magic, she was determined to turn Inukai back into a human form. She followed the recipe she had read and mixed all the ingredients with great seriousness. After some time, Makoto finally finished making the medicine and gave it to Inukai to drink. However, the medicine turned her into a dog completely. Luckily, after some time had passed, Inukai turned back into a human animal like before, as the effects of the medicine wore off. Soon after, Makoto and Inukai were discussing a medicine to restore Inukai's form. Then, suddenly Akane came to meet Makoto. On the other hand, Inukai, who had been waiting for Akane for a long time, got angry and asked Akane to turn her back into a human. However, she said that it was Inukai's mistake when she was drunk in the past and kept on forcing Akane to give her the chocolate because she was very hungry. After remembering the incident, Inukai apologized to her and Makoto. Before leaving, Akane promised to find a way to turn Inukai back to her human form. One morning, the Kei family had breakfast together with Makoto and Akane. After breakfast, Makoto went to tidy up her things while Cheeto suddenly came out of the room. Chinatsu, who saw Makoto's pet cat, followed Cheeto secretly. Along the way, Chinatsu met an old woman who saw a cherry blossom petal on her head. The old woman asked Chinatsu to keep the cherry petals because according to myth, if someone drops a cherry petal and keeps it, then they will be loved by the people they care about. On the other hand, something interesting happened to Cheeto when she arrived at a park where 3 boys were playing together. As soon as the boys saw her, they started chasing her. Fortunately, Cheeto was able to get away by climbing up a tree. Once the boys left, Cheeto came down from the tree and went near a mound located nearby. Chinatsu saw Cheeto and tried to approach her, but unfortunately, she fell into a trap that was under the mound of land. The trap was there to warn everyone to stay away from it. Feeling tired, Chinatsu went home looking very dirty. Then, Nana saw her and asked Chinatsu to clean herself. Soon after, When Chinatsu was cleaning herself, Chito seemed to be returning home. Afterward, Makoto asked permission to go for a walk with Chito. However, Kei, who knew that Makoto would go alone, looked worried that she might get lost. However, she tried to convince him that she would be fine because she will go with Chito. She believes that Chito can be a guide because her pet cat often travels alone. Not long after traveling for some time, Makoto was feeling lost and unsure about where to go, so she turned to her friend Chito for guidance. Then, Chito suggested they visit a building that had a picture resembling Makoto when she was just 4 years old. Upon arriving at the building, they encountered a dog that was tied up, and Chito decided to taunt it. Unfortunately, the dog managed to break free, and they had to run for their safety. Soon after, Makoto continued her journey and stumbled upon a beautiful park filled with cherry trees. It was there that she met Nao, who was in the midst of delivering an order. Unsure of where to go next, Makoto and Chito decided to join Nao on her delivery route. It turned out that their journey led them to the home of an elderly woman who had previously met Chinatsu. Upon seeing Makoto, the woman recognized her as a witch. She shared a story about a friend who was also a witch and used to bring black cats like Makoto. However, the old woman had not seen her friend since she got married and moved away, but she credited her friend for teaching her many things, including the spell that helped her marry her current husband. Shortly after leaving the elderly woman's house, Chito suggested they visit a park, where they stumbled upon a box filled with food and items. However, since it belonged to someone else, Makoto buried it again. Later on, feeling exhausted, Makoto and Chito decided to return home with Nao after a long day of sightseeing. The following day, Makoto continued practicing magic with Akane. She was still trying to figure out how to fly using a broom, but Akane showed her the proper technique. She explained that for a witch, the broom was only used as a tool to remove gravity, and they only needed to fly their own body. Meanwhile, Kei was busy working in the yard, pulling weeds. Akane then mentioned that she might stay with them for a few days, which made Chinatsu very happy. Chinatsu even begged Akane to take her as an apprentice so she could become a witch like Akane and Makoto. However, Akane couldn't decide right away because becoming a witch meant sacrificing one's normal life. So, she asked Chinatsu to talk to her parents since it was a significant decision to make. At that time, Chinatsu was excited about becoming a witch and immediately went to talk to her parents about it. Fortunately, they gave her permission, so she went back to Akane to tell her the good news. However, Akane wasn't sure at first but eventually decided to teach Chinatsu about the world of magic, from the work of witches to traditional rituals. But then, Akane gave Chinatsu time to reconsider, and after she showed strong determination, Akane finally accepted her as an apprentice witch. On the other hand, Makoto, who knew about Chinatsu's new identity, reminded her not to tell anyone about it, since the number of witches was decreasing. When they went to the convenience store, Chinatsu asked Makoto what she could do as a witch. Then, she explained that there were no set things a witch had to do, as they were free to do anything they wanted, like making medicine and selling it, learning spells while playing, fortune-telling like Inukai, or traveling around the world like Akane. However, they couldn't do bad things. Then, Makoto encouraged Chinatsu to use her magical abilities to help others as well as herself. Chinatsu shared that she dreams of building a pumpkin carriage and a candy house once she becomes a witch. Later, they arrived home, where Akane taught Makoto and Chinatsu how to make unique snacks. There, she instructed them to place a cloth mat on the table and draw a pentagram on a piece of paper. Then, they lit candles at each corner of the pentagram and placed treats in the north and south circles. Afterward, Akane asked Makoto to place her hand over the circle while casting a spell. While waiting for the candles to burn out, Chinatsu started learning how to draw pentagrams with Makoto. Finally, after a long wait, all the candles on the pentagram had gone out. Akane declared that the spell had worked on the snack, and she asked Makoto to try it first. However, when Makoto tasted it, there was no reaction. Therefore, Akane instructed her to wait for her return while watching the movie that Kei was enjoying. After finishing the film, Makoto suddenly burst into tears because the movie made her feel very sad. Then, Akane informed her that the spell on the snack had been successful in making people feel sad. Meanwhile, Chinatsu was munching on other snacks, which caused her to continuously burst out laughing, even while accompanying Kei to cook. When Keiji came and ate the two treats, he began to laugh and cry alternately. The next morning, Makoto, Kei, and Chinatsu got ready to go up the mountain, hoping to search for wild vegetables around the area. Shortly after, Makoto invited her older sister to come along, but Akane declined, preferring to watch soap operas on television. Soon after, Nao joined them for the trip up the mountain. Before setting off, Chito appeared very upset with Nao, who had made a hurtful comment about her weight. Eventually, she apologized to Chito. On the bus, she expressed amazement at seeing a feline passenger and asked about Chito's age. Then, Makoto revealed that Chito was approximately 17 years old in human years. After a while, they arrived at a mountainous area, and Makoto became very happy and excited upon seeing the pristine beauty of nature around her. Before they began to pick wild vegetables, Kei shared with them 4 crucial rules to keep in mind. First, they should avoid picking too many vegetables, as this could hinder their growth in the coming years. Secondly, they should not pick any unknown vegetables, as Kei had heard of someone dying in the spring after eating poisonous plants. Therefore, he recommended sticking to ostrich fern and flower fern. The third rule was that they mustn't go alone and should keep an eye on each other, as there was a chance of getting lost on the mountain. Lastly, Kei reminded them to be cautious of bears and suggested ringing bells to keep them at bay. Unfortunately, Kei had forgotten to bring the bell, even though he had prepared it beforehand, and had left it on the living room table. Shortly after they finished explaining everything, they ventured into the forest and before long, stumbled upon an ostrich fern. There, Kei eagerly asked everyone to help search for more ferns, and Chinatsu, who was out with Nao gathering wild vegetables, asked if Nao had ever collected them before. Then, Nao admitted it was her first time, while Chinatsu revealed she often visited this location with Kei. Though Chinatsu wasn't fond of eating wild vegetables, she planned to be less picky and try them out to become a witch. Suddenly, Makoto called out to Chinatsu and showed Nao a frog, causing her to scream in fear. It turned out to be Kei's clever plan to keep bears at bay. After picking the ostrich fern, they rested for a while and Kei suggested they pick some leeks, despite knowing they could cause smelly gas. At that time, Makoto agreed enthusiastically, and they continued their vegetable gathering journey. Eventually, they finished collecting wild vegetables and returned home. After that, Kei swiftly cooked them up and asked Makoto to taste the ostrich fern. She approved, finding it quite delicious. Curious, Chinatsu also gave it a try, but she found the vegetables more suited to grown-ups than children like herself. However, Chinatsu is not fond of vegetables, so Akane suggested that they go to a cafe that is famous for its yummy cakes. This cafe is managed by a witch and is located in a hidden spot, so it's an excellent opportunity for her to discover more about the witch world. Following Akane's suggestion, Makoto, Kei, and Chinatsu went to the cafe's address, which she had given them. However, they were taken aback when they saw the building. It appeared damaged and didn't resemble a cafe at all. Soon after, Makoto checked the address once again and found a message from Akane asking them to do a few things before entering the cafe. At that time, she did as instructed and showed Chinatsu how to do it too. After completing the instructions, the old building in front of them transformed into a cafe, and Makoto finally realized that the cafe was covered by magic. The actions they had taken made the original building visible again. After that, they entered the cafe. At that time, they were blown away by the fantastic interior design. They found a note that welcomed them and requested that they take a seat. When they sat down at one of the tables, glasses of water suddenly appeared, and a message popped up telling them that the owner would come to see them once they had ordered something. There, Makoto was perplexed by the strange occurrences in the cafe, so she immediately contacted Akane. Then, Akane informed her that the waitress at the cafe was, in fact, a ghost. Eventually, they placed their order, but they were all curious about the ghostly maid's true form who was serving them. Makoto decided to draw a magic circle so that they could see the ghost's true form. They summoned the ghostly maid, and when the ghost stepped onto Makoto's magic circle, they were able to see the ghost's true form, which was named Hina. Shortly after, Makoto and Chinatsu asked Hina a few questions, but as soon as Hina realized that the guests could see her true form, she quickly retreated to the kitchen. After that, as they were enjoying their food, a masked waitress named Shina Anzu approached them. She introduced herself as the daughter of the cafe owner, and explained that her mother was a great witch. Shortly after, Makoto introduced herself as a witch who had recently moved to the city and introduced her companions, Kei and Chinatsu. Then, Anzu informed them that her mother was the owner of the cafe and also a great witch. Afterward, Makoto expressed her desire to learn from Anzu, but Anzu clarified that her mother was the true witch. Makoto then excused herself to use the restroom, where she unexpectedly met Mrs. Shina, who had used magic to appear younger. At first, Makoto mistook her for Anzu, but Shina quickly explained the situation. Shortly after, Shina inquired about the cafe's cake, and Makoto and her friends raved about how delicious it was. Then, she revealed that the cake was made by Hina, the ghostly maid they had summoned earlier. Afterward, Makoto asked how long the cafe had been around, and Shina informed them that it had been in existence for over 200 years. The cafe used to be a gathering spot for otherworldly creatures like ghosts, so it was protected with enchantments to prevent ordinary humans from entering. Then, Shina also had informed Makoto that Harbinger had visited the cafe a few days back. Harbinger had brought some high-quality mandrakes, which Hina used to make a delightful hemp tea brew for Shina. The mandrakes were so good that even the poison in them had been effectively removed, leaving behind only the sweet taste. Meanwhile, Makoto, who had overheard this conversation, became curious about making mandrak tea since the one she had tried previously was always bitter. She was planning to spend some time at the cafe, and wondered if Kei's presence would be an issue. However, Shina had no problem with Kei being there since he already knew a witch. After a while, 2 ladybugs arrived at the cafe, and they were cordially greeted by Anzu and Shina. The ladybugs were regular customers, so Anzu offered them celebium flowers. When Chinatsu and Makoto learned that ladybugs could bring happiness, they tried to catch one but were unable to do so. Unfortunately, the ladybugs left soon after. At the same time, one of the regular customers of the cafe, a mysterious black-hooded creature, arrived, who usually comes to the cafe to drink tea during the day since it does not work until late at night. That moment, Chinatsu was curious about the creature and approached him, asking to talk, and was even given a candy by the creature that night. Recently, a fox visited the cafe, and Anzu offered him winter cherries. The fox was a regular Sunday visitor to the cafe for his meal. Upon seeing the fox, Chinatsu, Makoto, and Kei were eager to touch it, and the fox allowed them to do so. The fox also raised its voice when Chinatsu wanted to hear its voice. The following day, Nana read a story to Chinatsu about a fox making its voice, but Chinatsu said that the fox's voice in the story was different from its real voice, as she had heard it in person. Soon after, Makoto joined in to look at the picture story, and Chinatsu told her that it was a drawing made by Nana, who is a professional picture book writer. Then, Nana had asked Chinatsu to check whether the story was appropriate for children. Chinatsu felt that all the stories made by her mother were excellent and suitable for children after having read them all. Shortly after, Inukai arrived at the Makoto's house looking for Akane, but since she was not around, Nana and Makoto invited her in. When Chinatsu saw Inukai, she became very happy, and Chito was also delighted to see Al and even played with her and petted her. Then, Makoto commented that Chito wouldn't eat a rat if she were tired of it. Afterward, Inukai offered them snacks as an apology for bothering them the other day, and asked if they had any problems or concerns. However, Makoto and the others felt that they didn't have any significant issues. So, Inukai suggested predicting their future. Inukai explained that they should hold a prophecy stone, which she provided, and throw it into the center of a circle while asking for a prediction. She would then read the location of the stone to tell the prediction. When Makoto threw the stone, it represented journeys, surprises, and gifts, suggesting that she might encounter problems when leaving her house, but if she could solve the problem, she would experience significant development in her life. After that, the next person to throw stones is Chinatsu. Then, Inukai explains that the stones represent the different sides of tradition in a journey of new and valuable experiences. She predicts that Chinatsu will discover a new side of herself through this journey. After Kei throws the stone, Inukai encourages him that if he puts in the effort, he can do well on his upcoming exam. As they read through all the predictions, the darkness slowly creeps in and they are able to see her true beauty. It becomes late, so Inukai says her goodbyes and heads home. The following day, during recess, Makoto, who is having lunch with Nao, makes plans to take Nao to Kei's house to harvest some vegetables. Upon arriving, Makoto sees Akane, who had just arrived home. Then, she introduces Akane to Nao and tells that she is also a witch, just like them. At that time, Nao was amazed when she saw Makoto's vegetable garden because it looked like it was maintained by a professional gardener. Makoto invited Nao to come inside and take a break. While Nao was relaxing, Kei joined in and started talking to her. Akane thought that the two were on a date, so she left them alone. A little while later, Chinatsu arrived and asked Makoto to help harvest the radishes. There, Makoto also invited Nao to join in and showed her the radishes they were going to harvest. Then, she told Nao that radishes can help with weight loss and make skin smoother. Nao was very excited to hear this and asked if they could harvest some radishes. After they were done, they all sat down and enjoyed the radishes together. Later that night, Akane couldn't sleep, so she called Makoto, Chinatsu, and Kei to the living room to give them souvenirs. While they were together, they talked about the predictions that Inukai had made earlier. The next day, Makoto and the others were in a cooking class at school, and Nao was feeling down because she didn't know how to cook and was afraid of making mistakes. Shortly after, Makoto tried to encourage Nao by saying that nothing bad would happen. However, her group was given the task of cooking steak, which was quite complicated in terms of seasoning. At that time, Nao didn't have the confidence to cook it, especially since she had made a mistake while cooking before, which traumatized her. But then, the cooking teacher noticed that Nao was struggling and gave her instructions on how to cook the steak properly. With the help of Makoto and Kei, Nao finally managed to make a steak. After everyone finished cooking, they planned to eat the steak they made together, but they didn't have any rice left. A few days later, Makoto, Kei, Akane, and Chinatsu went to an apple orchard with Nana and Keiji. When they arrived, Nana introduced Makoto and Akane to the orchard employees and gave Makoto a ladder to use for picking apples. She warned them to be careful not to hit their heads on the tree trunk, but Makoto's head accidentally hit the trunk anyway. Akane laughed at Makoto, but she ended up hitting her head on the trunk as well. Shortly thereafter, Keiji gave Makoto and Akane a tutorial on how to properly prune apple trees, but because the dialect was hard for them to understand, Keiji asked Kei to explain it to them instead. Kei explained that all the flowers on the tree's branches would grow into apples, but if they all grew, the apples produced would not be of good quality. To make sure each apple got enough nutrients, they had to prune some of the flowers and only leave a few so that the tree could distribute nutrients to each apple evenly. To decide which flowers to prune, they would keep the ones closest to the stem and cut the rest. After learning about pruning, Makoto and Akane gave it a try. Chinatsu also helped by climbing up the tree to cut some flowers. Seeing this, Makoto wanted to climb the apple tree too. While climbing up, she hit the apple tree trunk again, but she finally made it up and enjoyed the beautiful view. After pruning the top of the tree, Makoto, who was climbing down, noticed a beehive nearby. Kei caught a bee and gave it to Makoto, but the bee ended up stinging her finger, which surprised her. After some time had passed, Keiji suggested that they take a break, and Makoto offered her finger cakes, which she had made during their previous cooking class, to everyone. She also brought some honey from the orchard gardener to accompany the cakes. The next day, on a foggy morning, Akane and Chinatsu were outside the house when they met a witch who was selling newspapers. At that time, Akane told Chinatsu about how witches have their own newspaper. Later, during breakfast, Akane shared with Makoto and Chinatsu some interesting news she had read in the witch's newspaper that a flying whale was going to pass by their town. Excited to see the whale, Akane urged Makoto and Chinatsu to get ready so they could watch the spectacle together. They took their broomsticks and flew to the location where they could see the whale. Shortly after, Akane applied a magical cream on their eyelids to help them see the whale because it would camouflage with the clouds. After waiting for some time, they finally saw the whale and Akane invited them to climb onto the whale's back. As they reached the whale, they were taken aback to witness the ruins of buildings, still standing after all these years. Akane, their guide, elucidated that in ancient times, people dwelled on flying whales. They meticulously scrutinized the ruins once again, eventually finding a magic circle on the ground and inscriptions of ancient scripts on the walls. During their exploration, they encountered Anzu, who had come with the desire to observe a flying whale. Anzu revealed to Makoto that after the people ceased living on the whales began to fly unbridledly around the globe, and only 3 whales had been located so far, with many more possibly scattered around the world. After growing weary of their expedition, Chinatsu and Anzu's stomachs started to rumble, and they opted to end their whale tour. Makoto and the others then invited Anzu to dine with them at Chinatsu's residence. Makoto also contacted Kei to inform him that Anzu would stop by her house as they met while observing a flying whale. Upon arriving at Chinatsu's abode, Anzu, awestruck by the house's magnificence, requested permission to take photos. Then, Kei extended a warm welcome to them and had already prepared a breakfast of hotcakes. At the same time, Anzu met Kenny, who immediately became privy to the information she shared about the whale and the reasons behind people abandoning it, which was consistent with Kenny's hypothesis. Soon after, Akane disclosed to Makoto that Kenny had a deep passion for anthropology, and traveled solo around the world, studying various civilizations to satiate her curiosity. After that, Makoto offered Anzu some pickled radish, and soon after, Kei finished cooking his hotcakes. At that moment, Chinatsu inquired about the history of hotcakes, and Anzu gladly shared that it originated from ancient Egypt, where the dough was made from a mixture of sugar, water, and flour before baking. Although hotcakes have been popular in Japan for about 70 years, the initial batter sold in Japan lacked sugar, resulting in its unpopularity. It was only when sugar was added to the mixture that its demand increased and was eventually accepted by the public. In the Western region, hotcakes are known as pancakes, derived from the word frying pan used to cook them. The difference between hotcakes and pancakes lies in their size, where the thicker version is called a hotcake, while the smaller ones are called pancakes. Everyone was impressed with Anzu's knowledge. While enjoying their hotcakes, Anzu remembered that she hadn't contacted Shina yet, so she asked permission to reach out to her parents. Recently, Anzu received a message from Shina delivered by an owl named Ora, which was a receipt that Akane had to pay. The following day, Makoto was busy cleaning when she stumbled upon a witch's robe hidden in Chito's pillow. Excited to try it on, she found that it was too small and in tatters. So she asked Nana for directions to the nearest cloth shop. On the other hand, Nana, being kind and helpful, drew her a detailed map of the shop's location. Worried that Makoto might get lost, Nana even offered to go with her. However, she refused, determined to overcome her tendency to forget directions. Armed with a map, Makoto and Chito flew on a broomstick towards the cloth shop. Along the way, they saw people bustling around, getting ready for the Lantern Festival. There, Makoto spotted Akane and Inukai among the crowd. Soon after arriving at the cloth shop's address, Makoto felt disoriented and couldn't locate the shop. It was then that she ran into Nao, who was delivering an order. There, Nao not only showed Makoto where the shop was, but she also invited her to the Lantern Festival the following day. At that time, Makoto had no plans, so she agreed to go with Nao. She then asked Nao for directions to the cloth shop she was looking for and was finally able to find it. After she arrived, Makoto didn't waste any time looking for the cloth she needed. While browsing, Chito suggested a green cloth with a cat's face motif that could glow in the dark. However, it was too noticeable to fly with, so she decided to purchase only 1 meter to use for the inside of her robes. She also bought black cloth for the outside. The fabric was so affordable that she decided to make 2 robes, one for herself and one for Chinatsu. Once back at home, Makoto immediately measured Chinatsu's body to make her the robe. She asked Chinatsu not to enter her room, but out of curiosity, Chinatsu couldn't resist and entered anyway. Then, Makoto let her see what she was working on. Later that night, Inukai had finished fortune-telling and saw Akane drunkenly stumbling towards him. Akane wanted Inukai to predict her fortune, but it was very expensive. However, she offered to pay for it with the drinks she brought with her. They ended up drinking together. Back to Makoto. So, after finishing Chinatsu's mage's robe, she felt happy seeing how much Chinatsu loved her new garment. At that time, Nana saw Chinatsu wearing the robe and quickly snapped some photos of her with Makoto. While passing by their room, Kei was surprised to see cat-patterned cloth scattered on the floor. When he entered, he was shocked to see Chinatsu wearing a witch's robe. Towards the end of the anime, Makoto heard her drunk sister Akane's voice outside and went to see her. She noticed something in her sister's hand and remembered that she had to clean the manger. While searching for mandrakes, they stumbled upon a group of ground fish that appeared because they loved festivals. Since they found plenty of fish, Akane treated them to snacks and sake. Before long, Chinatsu arrived and dozed off in Makoto's lap. During their time together, Akane reminded Makoto that she had to make her first report to the Witch Association about her life in Kei's house. At that time, Makoto realized that she had many interesting stories to tell. As they continued to search for mandrakes, Makoto couldn't help but admire the sight of the ground fish flying around, emitting a stunning fiery red color. The next night, she and her friends happily joined the town's Lantern Festival, enjoying the beautiful lights and festivities. And the anime ends. The silly moral lesson of this story is that it's okay to talk to your cat because you might end up making new friends and discovering that you're a witch.